Hey everyone, welcome to the EsportsNext podcast. I am thrilled to be joining as the host for season 3 along with my co-hosts. We are going to be interviewing speakers, sponsors, and attendees of the Esports Trade Association conference in Chicago. So if you're looking to understand who will be at the conference and what they're all about, tune in, come join us. All right, welcome to another episode of the EsportsNext podcast. I am John Davidson, your host, along with my wonderful co-host, Megan Van Petten, founder of the Esports Trade Association. And today we have a wonderful guest. We have Miss Tammy Dunn, who is the executive director of Snohomish County Sports Commission. And Tammy, we really appreciate all of your interaction, all of your support of ESTA. It was wonderful meeting you last year at the conference in Chicago. And I think we've really benefited as a community having you be a member. So it's really wonderful to have you here on the podcast today and share a little bit about your perspective as from the Sports Commission, and then also a little deeper as to who you are as a leader and how you've risen to this executive director role. So first of all, Tammy, why don't you tell us, what do you do at the Snohomish County Sports Commission?
Great. Well, thank you, John. Thank you, Megan. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And my role is the executive director of the Snohomish County Sports Commission. We're in Snohomish County, Washington. I like to say Everett, Washington as well, just north of Seattle. And we are an organization that bring sporting events to Snohomish County. We want to bring visitors, as well as we want our local community to be involved in sports. And I always like to say anything from A to Z. And esports and gaming is all part of that. The tournaments and the competitions and bringing individuals and connecting people to showcase our world of the Pacific Northwest, which is beautiful.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I'm curious, you're saying you're trying to bring every sport. So you're focused on sports, but essentially sports are entertainment, right? And so
Yep.
Heads in beds, attracting tourism, making people spend money, getting that tax revenue, I'm sure. When did esports specifically come across your radar? And when did you think we really need to figure this out for our county?
Sure. It actually started back in, I want to say 2018. We are great partners with Sports Travel Magazine, and they hosted an esports travel summit. And one of my staff members went and learned more about it. And I asked the gentleman or actually my sales manager, please contact esports organizations locally, look locally, find out who's here and get to know them. And he found one, and it was the Northwest Esports. Jake Green. He's local. He knows about Twitch. I'm still learning about Twitch and Discord, but he was very interested and he wanted to come to Snohomish County. So we hosted our very first in-person esports tournament basically 4 years ago in April of 2019. I think it was probably April, the third weekend. And it was you had about 20 people, bring your own computers. And we got media from it. We got it. The local newspaper wrote an article about it, and we were on our way. And we were going to the Esports Travel Associate or Summit again and learning more. And then COVID hit and it changed things, but I watched how esports still continue to compete because you could do it virtually. People didn't have to be in person. And from there, I started to learn even more about esports. To me, it's not about just gaming, but there's I don't know, esports is like a wheel. There's multiple
Yeah.
spokes,
Hmm.
and it was about to understand. And esports is just like I did when I started 18 years ago. How do I bring a baseball tournament to Snohomish County? How do I bring a gymnastics competition to Snohomish County? It's
Hmm.
talking to your local organizers, finding the local people that are interested, because that's the community that you can build on, that have the expertise, and understanding who your expertise is, because you
Yeah.
can't do it all. And now you've got a group of people that are working together for a common goal.
Well, I think that's a great key point that you made there as far as leaning on your local experts. And I think, a lot of groups, whether they're city sports commissions or whether they're just groups or companies from outside of esports, a lot of times a big mistake is simply saying, we know how to do this, or how hard could this be? And not going to the community, listening, learning, and saying, hey, how can I empower you to do this for me? Because you're going to know better doing it for your community than anybody else. I'm curious, what is one or two things that is different that you learned after doing that first event or after these 4 years from before you did that first event? What is something that you thought either this was different or had never crossed your mind that you've learned since then?
I think the biggest thing is the players that's in the esports space.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your traditional event organization. It could be a production company. It could be somebody from a gaming company. Riot is the one that Riot Games is what I think of first.
Mm-hmm.
But they produce those games. I've talked to many production people that have clients. And so it's just real interesting that you're really not talking to the event organizer, but you're talking to different individuals. However, they're still your key to learn more about what they need.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, I don't know, they're a resource. And I think that was one. The other thing is learning esports. Again, it goes back to there's much more than just gaming. There's education, their careers. And I think that's what probably excites me the most, to get my community involved, and the youth and the teachers and our Snohomish STEM, is that this is part of STEM education, and there's
Right.
careers. It's just not about gaming. It's careers for our kids so that they can do something that they love to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that aspect about it. Before we get a little further into your leadership and you as a person, I have one more question for you here. The people who are listening to this podcast who are in the esports community, they're going to know everything about gaming, the act of putting together a tournament, the cultural things that non-gamers may not know. But what this group may not know is how to speak to a sports commission, understanding what are the things that you take into account, what's important for you, what are your KPIs, what are you trying to accomplish as a sports commission. Can you share a little bit for the gamers and the gaming companies listening, what is the most effective way to approach a sports commission to set yourself up for success in those conversations?
Sure, great question. I would say to understand how we're funded sometimes, because we're funded by hotel motel tax. And that's whether you're a CVB, a Convention and Visitor Bureau, or a sports commission. A lot of the sports commissions are not standalones. They are part of a Convention and Visitor Bureau. And we are completely funded by the hotel motel tax. And those are from the hoteliers. And the goal there is to increase room nights and increase their hotel revenue. Now, there is the piece with the community, and that is important, but that's not our biggest KPI. We need to kind of integrate both, but Yeah, the hotel revenue and the hotel room nights is our biggest metrics that we need to measure. And I think the other piece is that not all of us are the same. We're different. Everybody's different. Some people can put forth an event service fee or a bid fee and have financial support that organizations are looking for. And it can be from either esports or a traditional sport if they're looking for finance, if they have a bid fee. Not everybody can pay that bid fee. So it's how do we negotiate to make things work, because we're all different. I think that's the biggest challenge, is understand who we all are, because I'm different than Myrtle Beach, and I'm different than Spokane, and I'm even more different than Seattle.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit about your county and your commission in your area, your CVB. What is a good group for you, and vice versa?
Great question. I think we're a community that is participant based. And when I mean participant based, that is your amateur youth, the 5-year-olds to the 18-year-olds, even the collegiate level as well. But you're bringing your mom and dad, you're bringing your siblings, the grandparents. Those are the facilities that we do have, majority of. But we also have some venues such as Angel of the Winds Arena. It's a hockey rink, or I should say a hockey ice arena that seats 8,300 people for hockey, and it has a community ice rink. So it has that big stage for the esports. They have the spectators, to have the pro teams come and be able to play competitively in person and let spectators see. And it's right in the heart of downtown Everett, which then helps that community to be vibrant and brings the business to the restaurants, the retails, because that all trickles down to what we do. Everything kind of trickles down to the local community.
I've been to an event in an arena in Milwaukee, an esports B2B and a little bit of a B2C, maybe around 400 people. Great event, great venue. It's so easy. You have the concessions, you know, it was a half day. There was a small tournament and, you know, some vendors, and just real casual, real easy. Have you done anything like that?
We haven't yet. That is one thing that we're looking for. I think that's the reason why we became a member of the Esports Trade Association, is to understand the scope of the different competitions that are out there for esports, and also to learn, because that's another piece that's learned, particularly over the last 6 months, that I've learned that's different, is how people are opening a small space to have computers, and people can come and play, or they can come and work on computers. They have a place, a safe place that they can go and feel comfortable on being on their computers or having computers. So it's giving them the opportunity to gain that experience. And that is one thing that I'm looking for. Is there something in our community so that we can have something small on a regular basis and not always think big? Big is great, but we want to be small as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that, you know, a lot of people, when they think about esports, they're thinking, let's bring the League of Legends World Championships to our city. And it's like, well, first of all, that's kind of like moving heaven and earth. Secondly, there are so many different tournaments across so many games, across so many categories, from professional to collegiate, high school, youth, these B2B events as well. And so I think it's a great learning to help people understand that there are so many different paths into esports, like you said, all these different spokes, Tammy, that just figure out which one makes the most sense for you. And also too, my experience in sponsorships, one-off event rarely does much of anything for anybody, right? It's that consistent cadence over time that makes an impact. And it's what this community really responds to is, oh, you didn't just throw out one thing one time and only 20 people showed up, so you stopped. You're here for me. You're here to support my passion. And I think it's all about what can your community, specifically Snohomish County in this example, lean into naturally that makes sense for who your community is.
Yeah, I think for us is finding that local person. We need to continue to find that local person and find out who they know. And then doing the 6 degrees of separation and finding that right venue space so that we can have something in person. And it can be small, it can be as small as 3,000 square feet meeting space. But being able to have that and do it, as well as I like to say, it needs to be financially sound as well. And the costs have to be right, because if our costs are higher than what the event organizer can pay, then that just doesn't make it doesn't make sense, because somebody's losing. And so it's really finding, again, going back to finding those partnerships, but also understanding that it's not going to happen overnight. And with coming out of COVID, I went to Esports Travel Summit in Pittsburgh in December of 21, and then Daytona in 2022 in June, and I'll go back to Toronto. So now I've really been doing this for about 1.5 years, and it's going to take it could take another 2 to 3 years, but we just have to be patient, because we're building relationships. And it's just not about sales and going, okay, come to my community, one and done, okay, now on to the next. I want to build that so that every year that person is having that competition at the same time every year. And it's on everybody's schedule, because then that's how we get well known. So it takes time. And what we're doing is, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just keep going, one foot in front of the other.
County is so lucky to have you. And you're so right. Like I tell people, use what you have now while you build your community with a champion, and then save your money for the Evas of the world. The dream that you're going to have, Dallas, Arlington, they're so ahead of most. But, I bumped into somebody last week that's a sports commissioner, and he said, we don't have anything. And I said, really? You don't have an old theater? And he's like, oh, well, we have 2 or 3. And I'm like,
well, and sometimes those old theaters, especially the smaller ones, are a great solution, because when people who know nothing about esports, they read these headlines. I'm sure, Tammy, 5-6 years ago, you're reading these headlines, you're like, how many hundreds of thousands of people are watching this tournament? Boy, we need to build out a football stadium.
Right.
The truth of the matter is, so many of these events are small.
That's right.
And, kind of what is the rule in politics? You always want to book a smaller room. It doesn't
in anything. You want to grow into your space. Nothing is worse than a big, huge empty space full of a couple people standing around. Tammy, you're going to do it slow and steady. I know you, because one of the things when I met you, looking back, I want to know your leadership style. Can we talk a little bit about her Rotarian values? Okay, let's learn a little bit about you and why a champion in your area is going to be so fortunate to work with you and build this out over the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, my business style is what I call the 4-way toss. And I will say that's probably how I've done my business all my life. Prior to doing sports tourism for 18 years, I was in the restaurant industry for 20. And it was about taking care of customers and doing business the right way. And that was taking care of your customers making sure that everybody felt welcomed, and building the goodwill and the friendships. And to me, that's what it's about, because you're building partnerships. And I was a Rotarian in 2003. I had to leave after 6 months, and I came back in 2010. And I wanted to join because it was a group of individuals that they got things done. And that's the type of person I am, is I want to be able to get things done and have partnerships, people that I can call up and say, I need some help. Who can I reach out to? And those are the connections that we need, whether we're doing esports or the traditional sports. We need those partnerships, and treat everybody fairly, like your friend, because that's how my parents brought me up. So
I love that. John, when we met, I'll never forget one of the first questions he asked me, and you guys have this in common because you both worked there. He asked me my Starbucks order.
Yeah, I did. I've got some opinions on Starbucks orders.
He's hilarious. Both of you worked at Starbucks. So I
Yep.
feel like we should call this show, What's Your Starbucks Order? And I know what he was really asking. He was really asking how do I treat people? What's important to me? Do I return the coffee if the order is wrong or whatever?
Yeah.
And he's got some theories, but it was Johnny, it was like one of the first conversations we had as we were interviewing. And I obviously I passed, and my orders changed over the years, but is that where you got your start, Tammy? Was it at Starbucks in the restaurant?
No, actually, I will say that in the restaurant industry, my start was with Taco Time. So it was Taco Time and then Rack's Restaurant. And Rack's Restaurant, I took care of people. It's really hard to describe, but I just cared about the people that were on the other side of the counter.
Yeah.
And so everything that I've done, even when I was a box office ticket taker at Angel of the Winds Arena, which helped get me to where I am today, I just took care of the people when they walked up. I'm on the other side of the glass, and they walked up and they're staring at us going, okay, who do I go to? And I'm like, come on up, how can I help you? And it's just one of the things that I did in the restaurant industries, what I did with Starbucks. I know, those difficult customers, John, when they just come in and they say, I don't want you making that drink. I want so-and-so making that drink, because they had a particular way. And so it's like, oh, okay. And I was never offended, but I remember this one person that I actually got to know her and found out who she was. Oh, so you're a teacher? Yes, I'm a teacher. Well, that's great. My mom was a teacher for 32 years. That lit up her face. It opened her eyes, and it was like, wow, she's human over there on the other side. And since then, I had a relationship with her where we were friends, and she would smile, and she just was particular because she wanted her drink a certain way. But I got a chance to know her, and I think that's really where I kind of come from, is I want to get to know that person and that partnership, and also learn. It's all about learning everything, learning something new every day.
Well, I think there's, I heard a quote, I'm going to say it the wrong way, of course, but it's something along the lines of, you can't hate on somebody once you know their story.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that when you hear what a lot of times difficult people have been through difficult times, right? And so they are the result, like they had to be had to have a wall up or whatever just to get through the
Yep.
situation they were in or something like that. And then the other thing, with the teaching example is you build relatability. It's like, oh, wait, some of the things that I know. My mom was a teacher as well. So
Yes.
we could probably relate on quite a few things there, Tammy, as far as like, in the summer, prepping to get the classroom ready and
Yep.
all of those things. But, before we started recording this episode, you had shared a little bit about how you had received your DEI certification. And Megan had asked for the audience listening here, Megan had said, that's interesting because, you are part of a minority group, specifically in the sports space, being a woman.
Yep.
What was it that, a lot of people in your situation would say, I'm the answer to the diversity, like, what more do I have to learn? It's me. But you had a different approach. Why don't you share your perspective on
Sure.
that?
My biggest take is yes, I'm a minority. I'm a woman. I'm also in sports. I take the lesser side of the sports that I'm a minority because I live and breathe sports. But the thing is that I look at my race. I'm white. Though I'm a woman, I'm white. So I don't know what it's like for the BIPOC community. And we are very diverse in the Seattle area. And even in Snohomish County, we are very diverse. And so it's really trying to understand how people see things and to see things holistically. It's really about trying to understand how we can help each other, because somebody that is Black may see it totally different than I do.
Right.
I'm in part, and this just brought to my attention, I'm in part of a peer group, and somebody said stakeholder, and the leader said, you have to be careful about stakeholder because it can mean something different for somebody else of a different nationality. And I'm like, that's a great point. And she explained it. And so us as business leaders, something like as simple as stakeholders, which means business leaders or people that we answer to, or our hoteliers on our incident, there are stakeholders that could mean something different to somebody else. So how do we understand a little bit better and take those classes so that we can learn better? We learn by talking to people, but also just taking that class to have that better idea. And that really helped me to understand some of those pieces. It's thinking about the other person and how you can help yourself so that you can see it through their eyes.
Because it's not the other person that needs to educate us. It's us that needs to educate ourselves as to what happened.
Yes.
And that's one of the distinctions I liked. I always like asking people, what did you do during COVID? It's like almost as telling as what's your Starbucks order. So
Almost.
John is so serious about that. But one of my favorite questions to ask anyone is what they did with that time. I find it fascinating because the answers just really do share so much. And that was a beautiful thing that you did for so many as a leader. You're a great example.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. And I think the other thing about COVID, us as organizations that are destination management organizations, in looking at a different lens, and how can we educate ourselves with our own community that was devastated by COVID, and how do we help? And so that allowed me to be okay with change and look at some things differently. And the same way with diversity, inclusion, and equity. And really, I have a better understanding. And I will say that we've got an event. It's not esports, but it's about women. And this organization is started because they believe in women being professionals. And there's not enough opportunities for women to be professionals. And so they're opening up a new space, which is valuable in today's world with sports. And esports can be the same way with trying to open doors with the women. And, my Rotary Club is giving back to the esports program of the YMCA Snohomish County, particularly for the girls, to get them to be in esports, because they're hesitant about playing against the boys. And so how do we help those? And so DEI, that class, really helped me to understand some things totally different.
Yeah, the esports space, one thing that I love about it is these issues that we deal with throughout our culture are so much more to the forefront. I feel like maybe it's a generational thing, maybe it's a esports thing, but I think in the past, a lot of times when we have these challenges with whether it's diversity or equal representation, those things are pushed to the background, like, no, don't discuss that, or there's no problem here. And our community is one that is very vocal. And so while there are still issues with diversity and equal representation, what I love is the conversations are happening. And that's how action is then pushed forward. As we're nearing the end of this episode, which I'm just loving this conversation with you, Tammy, I'd like to bring it back to the conference a little bit.
Sure.
So I just have two final questions. And my first question is, what is the reason that you attend EsportsNext?
My biggest reason was to learn, to understand. We're not the expert. And so we need to go talk to the individuals that understand esports, whether it's a production company, whether it's somebody who has a career in esports, or even representing the players. I'll use the attorneys. What last year was one opportunity for me to learn that it's just so much bigger than just playing games. There's a community, and they're looking out for the players, and that's the resource. You guys are a resource. The conference is a resource so that I can make those connections face to face. Connections are so important for us because we're in the relationship business and we're in the people business. And we're also one that we want to talk to people in person. So what better way to have the education over 2 days, be able to network, talk to individuals, and they become your friends. That's the thing. They become your friends, because I have friends all over the United States. And that's the cool part, because then I can pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, I've got an issue here, or who should I talk to? And that's the thing about the conference, is you get that education to learn about esports specific. And it's, some people will call it niche, but I call it very specific, that you gain knowledge and you take something away. And I was blown away last year.
Awesome.
And just with the education pieces, the 2-minute, I can't think of it right now, the innovation where people are coming up and they're talking about their product, and
Elevator pitch competition.
Elevator pitch. What a great idea. These are business people that are in the space. So how can you support them and understand them?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. My last question for you, I'm sure everybody listening to this episode is thinking, I want to meet Tammy in person. My goodness. Who are the types of groups and people in your role as executive director of this sports commission? Who are the type of people that you are looking to meet with, who, if they are listening to this episode, knowing you'll be there in Chicago, can say, hey, this is a great opportunity to connect?
Oh, I think just people that want to be friends, also be a resource. I enjoy, telling about our community, but really trying to understand. From the sports commission side, I think we need to take the time to come to the conference to understand more about it. And there's many of us that don't. There are some destinations that have esports so that they're involved. Madison is one, Myrtle Beach is another one. There are many organizations out there, cities that are involved, but for us as a destination, I think this conference will help us to understand it better. And I think for the individuals that are going to be there, from the ones that are looking for locations to host their tournaments or to understand their destination, just come and ask questions, and learn, because I want to learn from them as well.
Great. So if you are somebody who has a great understanding of esports, or you're somebody who is looking for a destination for a tournament, we definitely hope that you arrive in Chicago to meet with Tammy and our many other members who will be in attendance there. Tammy, thank you so much for joining us today. We just so love that you are part of our community. We really appreciate sharing your perspective from the Sports Commission, and also learning more about who you are as a person, who you are as a leader.
Great. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I always enjoy being part of the Esports Trade Association, Coffee Connections. I've learned so much, and I just appreciate everything that you do, John and Megan, as well. You guys are very passionate, and it shows, and it's very cool.
That is so nice. And did you know we're taking the Coffee Connections on the road? We are taking it to Dallas this week and Toronto, Canada. We're launching the Toronto chapter with a Coffee Connection at the Esports Business Summit. They're a member.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw that.
Good. Not much gets past you, Tammy Dunn. Thank you for being on the show.
It's been my pleasure. I've enjoyed it. And I look forward to seeing everybody in Chicago.
As do we. Thank you.
As do we. Thank you.